August 9th, 1941. Over northern France, a Spitfire piloted by Wing Commander Douglas Bader collides with a German Messerschmitt Bf 109 during a dogfight. Bader's aircraft breaks apart. He bails out, but one of his artificial legs catches in the cockpit and tears away. He lands with only one prosthetic leg. Hours later, Bader sits across a table from the German pilot who orchestrated the ambush that brought him down, Lieutenant Colonel Adolf Galland. Commander of German fighter forces in France, Galland asks if Bader needs anything. Yes, Bader says, I need another leg. Galland makes an extraordinary offer. He'll ask the RAF to drop a replacement leg behind German lines during their next bombing raid. He gives his word it won't be fired upon. 18 years later, in 1959, these same two men stand together in London. Not as enemies, as best friends. They would remain so until Bader's death in 1982. 41 years of friendship born from one encounter as captor and prisoner. Douglas Robert Stewart Bader was born February 21st, 1910 in London. He joined the Royal Air Force in 1928 as a cadet at the RAF College Cranwell. Bader excelled as a pilot and was known for aerobatic skill and aggressive confidence. Some called it arrogance. On December 14th, 1931, everything changed. While performing low-level aerobatics at Woodley Airfield near Reading, Bader's Bristol Bulldog biplane clipped the ground during a slow roll. The aircraft cartwheeled and crashed. Bader was pulled from the wreckage with catastrophic injuries. Doctors amputated his right leg above the knee. Days later, infection forced amputation of his left leg below the knee. At 21 years old, Douglas Bader had lost both legs. Most would have retired. Bader fought to stay in the RAF. He learned to walk on tin prosthetic legs. He learned to drive. He even learned to dance. But the RAF Medical Board declared him unfit for flying duties and invalidated him out in April 1933. Bader spent the next 7 years working as a petroleum executive, but when World War II began in September 1939, he lobbied relentlessly for reinstatement. The RAF, desperately short of experienced pilots, finally relented in November 1939. By summer 1940, Bader was flying Hurricanes with No. 222 Squadron during the Battle of Britain. His aggressive tactics and leadership earned him command of No. 242 Squadron. By 1941, he'd been promoted to Wing Commander, leading 3 squadrons on offensive sweeps over occupied France. By August 1941, Bader was credited with at least 22 enemy aircraft destroyed, plus additional probables and damaged. He was one of Britain's most famous pilots, a national hero who'd overcome impossible odds. On August 9th, 1941, Bader led a fighter sweep over northern France near Le Touquet. His formation encountered German fighters from JG-26, commanded by Adolf Galland. What exactly happened during that dogfight remains debated. German records credit Galland's pilots with shooting down Bader. British witnesses reported a mid-air collision between Bader's Spitfire and a Bf 109. What's certain, Bader's Spitfire broke apart. The tail section separated. Bader, trapped in the cockpit, struggled to escape as the aircraft tumbled toward Earth. He finally broke free, but his right prosthetic leg, attached to the rudder pedal, tore away. He descended under parachute with only his left artificial leg. Bader landed near Saint-Omer. German soldiers found him lying in a field, remarkably calm given the circumstances. They took him to Saint-Omer Hospital, where doctors examined him. The hospital staff was astonished to discover he had artificial legs and was missing one. Word spread quickly through German military channels. Adolf Galland, whose headquarters was at Saint-Omer Airfield, learned that the famous British legless pilot had been captured. Galland went to meet him. Their first encounter set the tone for everything that followed. Galland entered the hospital room expecting a dejected, defeated enemy. Instead, he found Bader sitting up, smoking, demanding to know when he could have his missing leg back so he could attempt escape. Galland was impressed. Here was a warrior, a professional who refused to accept defeat even as a prisoner. Galland understood that mindset. He himself had overcome serious injuries earlier in his career and flown combat missions against medical advice. The two men talked, not as captor and prisoner, but as pilots. They discussed tactics, aircraft performance, specific engagements. Galland asked about the Spitfire's advantages. Bader asked about the Bf 109's fuel injection system that gave German fighters an edge in negative G maneuvers. Then Bader mentioned his missing leg. Galland immediately offered a solution. He would contact the RAF through proper channels and request that a replacement prosthetic be dropped during the next British operation over France. More remarkably, Galland gave his personal guarantee that German anti-aircraft batteries would not fire on the aircraft delivering it. This wasn't mercy, it was respect between professionals. Galland later said he admired any man who could fly combat missions without legs. The least he could do was ensure Bader had both prosthetics for his time as a prisoner. The RAF responded positively. On August 19, 1941, a British bomber dropped a package containing a replacement artificial leg during a raid over Saint-Omer. German forces collected it and delivered it to Bader. Galland visited again. He brought gifts, a bottle of French wine and cigarettes. He invited Bader to tour Saint-Omer airfield and even allowed him to sit in a Bf-109 cockpit while under guard. Bader, with characteristic boldness, asked if Galland would let him take it for a test flight. Galland smiled and declined. "I fear you would attempt an escape, and we would have to chase you and perhaps shoot at you again. I would prefer not to." They parted on friendly terms. Bader was sent to a prisoner of war camp. Galland returned to combat operations. Bader spent the next 4 years in various POW camps, including Stalag Luft III, where he participated in escape planning. The Germans eventually sent him to Colditz Castle, a maximum security facility for incorrigible prisoners who'd attempted multiple escapes. On May 1945, Germany surrendered. Bader was liberated and returned to Britain a hero. He was promoted to group captain and participated in victory celebrations, including flying in the Victory Day flypast over London. Adolf Galland also survived the war. He'd been dismissed from his command position in January 1945 after publicly criticising Hermann Göring's leadership. Galland formed Jagdverband 44, an elite unit flying Messerschmitt Me-262 jets in the war's final months. He surrendered to American forces in May 1945. Both men faced post-war challenges. Bader's fame meant he was in demand for public appearances and speaking engagements. He worked for Shell Oil Company and became an advocate for disabled veterans. He was knighted in 1976, becoming Sir Douglas Bader. Galland faced interrogation by Allied intelligence, then worked in Argentina from 1948 to 1955 as an aviation consultant. He returned to Germany and established an aviation consultancy business in Bonn. In the late 1950s, as wounds from the war began healing, former adversaries started meeting at aviation events. German and British pilots who'd tried to kill each other attended reunions together. In 1959, Galland attended an aviation event in London. Douglas Bader was there. 18 years had passed since their meeting at Saint-Omer. Neither man had seen the other since 1941. Their reunion was immediate and warm. Bader greeted Galland with genuine pleasure. Galland later recalled feeling relieved. He hadn't known if the British would welcome a former enemy, especially one who'd shot down their national hero. But Bader held no grudges. He'd been doing his job. Galland had been doing his. The war was over, they were pilots, and pilots understood each other in ways outsiders never could. That meeting rekindled something from 1941. They exchanged contact information. They began corresponding. When Galland visited Britain, he met with Bader. When Bader travelled to Germany for events, Galland hosted him. Their friendship deepened over the years. They attended air shows together. They appeared on television programmes discussing aerial combat. They wrote forewords for each other's memoirs. Bader wrote the introduction for Galland's book The First and the Last. Galland praised Bader's autobiography, Reach for the Sky. In the 1960s and 1970s, as both men aged, their friendship became well known in aviation circles. They represented something powerful, former enemies who'd moved beyond the conflict to recognise shared experiences and mutual respect. September the 5th, 1982. Douglas Bader died after suffering a heart attack while driving to a dinner engagement. He was 72 years old. The news reached Galland in Germany. He'd lost not just a former adversary, but a genuine friend. Galland attended memorial services in Bader's honour. He spoke publicly about their friendship, calling Bader one of the bravest men I ever knew. Galland continued attending aviation events throughout the 1980s and 1990s. He often spoke about Bader, keeping his friend's memory alive. On February 9, 1996, Adolf Galland died at his home in Remagen, Germany. He was 83 years old. He'd outlived Bader by nearly 14 years. At Galland's funeral, tributes came from around the world. Many mentioned his friendship with Douglas Bader as an example of reconciliation between former enemies. Their friendship had spanned 23 years, from their 1959 reunion until Bader's death in 1982, but the foundation had been laid 41 years earlier, in a hospital room at Saint-Omer, when a German commander showed respect to a captured British pilot with no legs. Douglas Bader and Adolf Galland's friendship demonstrates something essential about professional warriors. The conflict is temporary, but the understanding between them can be permanent. Bader, for his part, never blamed Galland personally for shooting him down. That was war. Pilots on both sides were doing their jobs. What mattered was how they treated each other when the shooting stopped. The friendship also revealed something about both men's characters. Bader's aggressive confidence and refusal to accept limitations made him a difficult prisoner, but also someone Galland could respect. Galland's willingness to show courtesy to an enemy reflected a code of honour that transcended nationality. One encounter in 1941 that led to 41 years of mutual respect and 23 years of genuine friendship. That's not just a war story. That's proof that enemies can choose to become friends.